Vader: Shards of the Past, a Star Wars theory fan film, was released to much anticipation on December 21st, 2018. I knew Star Wars Theory was making a fan film, but you guys know me, I'm not the most topical or up-to-date dude on YouTube. I didn't even know what YouTube Rewind was until like a week ago. But I knew that this fan film was being made, and as I've said during every single live stream that I've done since Christmas, I'm excited to give it a watch. I just needed to find some time because life. And now the holidays are over and my parents are babysitting my daughter as I speak, like they often do once a week. So now I can catch up on some channel stuff, watch some Clone Wars episode, watch the fan film, and knock out a little bit of non-HelloGreedo stuff that's been pressing. So let's jump in. I thought the decision to open up the fan film with Darth Vader checking his phone while taking a poop was a little strange. I'm just kidding. That's not in the fan film. I really enjoyed the ominous opening text. The music, the Death Star alarm slowly blaring in the background as we're given a little context regarding what's been happening and what's about to happen. My favorite line from the opening text was, "For some, the Empire brings fear. For others, it brings hope." I've always enjoyed the nebulous nature of what is generally regarded as black and white, good guys and bad guys is fun, it's classic, but the more Star Wars or any franchise further dissects the bad guys, their motivations, and even a citizenry's response to authority or a new system of governance, the more I draw enjoyment out of the overall universe. Some are fearful of this new system, some are hopeful for the new system, perhaps finding optimism in structure and order. Like I said, I just jumped into the fan film. I have no idea what the budget is. I have no idea what all went into it. I've seen a few like production stills and whatnot. I don't know what the reception has been. But I have to say, the opening sequence, while it was a lot going on, and kind of what I expected, because a lot of Star Wars fan films seem like visual effects tests, right? Lightsaber tests. And while this did feel a lot like that to me, I found it to be more than that. The dialogue between the Emperor and Vader was pretty solid. Vader's struggle is fully on display. My favorite line of dialogue during the sequence was from the Emperor. He said, "Always the servant, always the slave." My favorite lightsaber fight in the entire saga is at the end of Return of the Jedi because it's more than just boom boom action. It's primarily a conversation. The Emperor is toying with Luke, believes that Vader fully has his back, a conversation about family, followed by an act of redemption. And the conversation here at the opening of the fan film between the Emperor and Vader was kind of a pleasant surprise, a pleasant addition. If the film didn't have that layer of conversation at the beginning here, and it was all floating lasers and seizure-inducing lightning effects, I probably would have shrugged it off. Like I said, most fan films kind of fail in the storytelling department and in turn just throw a bunch of VFX on the screen, and while this was a little over the top for my taste, a little too The Force Unleashed, I did find it enjoyable and pretty intense, mainly for the back and forth tension between Vader and the Emperor, more so than the visuals that were going on. I did like how it was shot, the chaotic nature of the handheld camera as we're looking at some clone troops, as the action is taking place mixed with kind of stoic and steady shots of a stoic and steady Vader. I'm gonna have to check some behind the scenes shots or videos if those even exist. I don't know if they do or not, or I don't know if they've been released, because I'm curious how much space they had to work with during the sequence. Overall, my takeaway from the opening scene, the first 6 minutes, was that in comparison to other fan films, it was one of the better action sequences. A little over the top for my boring old original trilogy fanboy asshole taste, I'm sure the vast majority of folks who watched the fan film thought it was awesome. Because there's a lot of folks who seem, and it's not a bad thing or a good thing, but seem to see the Force as like a superpower, like a level in The Force Unleashed. I really like The Force Unleashed, by the way. And as I've said since the very beginning of this channel's existence, I like my Force small and subdued. Like old green Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back. A little 70s hashhead hippie mysticism, a little Eastern mythology. So like I said, while the opening sequence was a little fucking crazy for my personal taste, it was smoothed over by what I found to be an interesting interaction. And as the fan film progressed, as we learned more about what was going on, I kept getting flashbacks of the Darth Vader Dark Lord of the Sith comic series. There's kind of a dream sequency few panels in one of the early episodes where Vader is kind of imagining killing the Emperor. We actually see the Emperor dead. He's imagining going and apologizing basically to Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he snaps out of it, and then the Emperor puts him on a quest to go hunt down some Jedi. So I was heavily reminded of that comic series. Obviously, parallel thinking is a real thing, but it was just interesting to see how similar these things were. And that being said, if you guys haven't read the Dark Lord of the Sith comic series, it's fantastic. A lot of good Darth Vader material in there. Anyway, When we see Vader choke the Emperor and kill the Emperor, I did think that the fan film was gonna tell an alternative history. That's what I thought it was gonna do. Like when books or shows tell a story about what would have happened if world events would have turned out differently. Like Philip K. Dick's Man in the High Castle, right? I thought the film was going to take that route. And to me, doing an alternative history Star Wars fan film that shows Vader killing the Emperor and having a blank slate to work with for subsequent episodes would have been really interesting. Obviously, that's not what Star Wars Theory wanted to do. That's not the story he wanted to tell, so that's cool. Creators can and should make whatever the hell they want to make without outside pressure or audience input, but when I saw that moment, I thought taking his series down an alternative history path would have been pretty goddamn interesting and different. The sequence with Padme was touching, but probably way more touching to other viewers than it was for me. What's neat about this sequence, and what I think Theory is going for, and it seems kind of obvious, right, is showing Vader's struggle with the past, not really knowing how events fully transpired, being in the dark about a lot of that stuff, maybe being a little out of control with his own destiny and coping with the concept of him being a pawn to the Emperor. This has been looked at by some non-film material, primarily comics. Even new canon comics, the struggle, the coping, the servitude, which is why I kind of would have loved for an alternative history concept to come into play. I mean, some of the stuff we've seen before, right? Like the stopping of the lasers. We saw that in The Force Awakens. I love it as a concept. I fucking love it. But like, it was cool in The Force Awakens. It was subtle, small. This was like, oh yeah, Kylo stopped 1, Vader stops 1,000. I mean, it's neat. It's a cool concept. It's a neat visual. But yeah, that's just the vibe I get from it. Vader is super duper powerful. The opening sequence ends with Vader waking up. We see a close-up of his eyes in his tank. He looks confused. It turns out that was all of a dream based off of a wish, I suppose, based off of his struggle. The shot of him in his tank was great. The visuals in this thing are impressive, really impressive. Like I said earlier, I have no idea what the budget was, but a lot of it must have gone to VFX. Compared to other fan films that I've seen, this is certainly the most visually demanding. Well, maybe visually complex is a better way to phrase that. And I'm not even talking about the lightning or the lightsabers or blaster fire or any crazy spectacle. I'm talking about the subtle things like Vader in his tank. That was great. Even the makeup on Vader's face, the singed eyelashes, his eyes changing color, all that stuff was really impressive. So, the Emperor requests Vader's presence, and they meet up. The guy who played the Emperor does a really good job. Well, shit, all of the costumes are great. I'm assuming that Star Wars Theory got a lot of 501st members to help him out on the project, which is awesome. The 501st helps out with a shitload of fan films, and it's always neat to see. But yeah, the guy who played the Emperor did a great job. Look, this is a fan film. You don't have Ian McDiarmid. You can't judge it in that department with what you'd expect from a big blockbuster, right? But I thought the guy who played the Emperor did a really solid job. He does a good impression. Obviously, the face is different. Looks a bit off. Once again, it's hard to harshly judge a fan film on those points. They did the best they could, and they did a good job. Some of the dialogue in the scene between the Emperor and Vader was a little wonky and wordy, just like this review. But when you hear the Emperor speak and say new things, new words, new phrases, all that kind of stuff you've never heard him say before, it might sound a little goofy, right? I mean, maybe it's the writing, but you know, him just saying new stuff, it's gonna sound a little off because it's new. Does that make sense? I don't really know how to correctly word those thoughts. But I do like how the dialogue almost foreshadows Vader's redemption at the end of Return of the Jedi. It's pretty on the nose. It's hard to miss. And a lot of the dialogue, probably just from parallel thinking in the writing department, heavily reminds me of the dialogue between Vader and the Emperor in the Dark Lord of the Sith comic series. So the Emperor gives Vader a task to head to Naboo to find a Jedi. Vader arrives on Naboo, which was a beautiful setting once again. The visuals in this thing are very impressive. Vader tells a clone that he wants to use the 501st. The clone walks off screen and says, "Make way for the boys in blue." Vader begins to have a subtle flashback, hearing the sounds of battle, and we even hear a little Wilhelm scream in there. And then the first episode of this fan film series comes to an end. You know, going in, I didn't really know what to expect. I had heard a few things from folks, but I never like to judge something or judge people based off of what other people tell me about something or someone. I want to check out the thing for myself, right? And when the opening sequence popped off, I have to admit I was worried. I thought the entire fan film was just going to be nothing but super duper level 20 force powers. I thought it was going to just be lightsabers and force lightning and one big crazy fucking epilepsy warning, because super powerful force power is super powerful. But it wasn't totally like that. The opening sequence was actually my least favorite part, to tell you the truth. Well, the beginning of it at least. Once the dialogue started, I found a little bit more enjoyment in it. I was surprised how short the film was, just because I had heard it was going to be like a full-length thing, and I don't know if that was just some bullshit that got spread around through the grapevine by people who just make stuff up when they don't really know, but nonetheless, I was a little taken aback when the credits popped up. And in terms of a fan film length, this is pretty average, I'd say. They're usually about this short, and obviously he's going to make more episodes, so it makes sense to do it in little snippets, especially as a YouTuber, you know? But yeah, when it ended, I was surprised. I found a lot of the ideas in the film to have already been used or explored by other Star Wars material. I was hoping that the fan film would put a new spin on things or introduce new concepts or go down a path that we've never considered before, but we've seen Vader hunt Jedi, we've seen Vader take orders, so in that department, I was wanting more. Again, this is the story that Star Wars Theory wanted to tell, and I would never fault any creator for telling the tale that they want to tell, or make a thing that they want to make. I have a deeply held philosophy that wants creators to make things that they want to make without audience input or even audience expectations, whether that be in music, movies, games, you name it. If the Beatles kept making music like Please Please Me because everybody liked Please Please Me and everybody wanted more Please Please Me, then we would never get Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Personal artistic decisions above everything else. My favorite fan film is called Jakku First Wave. It's still my favorite. It's short and sweet, it's subtle, emotional, and interesting from the perspective of a couple grunts about to drop into battle. And that fan film, to me, is one of the most humanizing looks at an average foot soldier in the Star Wars universe since the Clone Wars animated show. Jakku First Wave did something new and different. It showed a different side of things, which in my opinion, this fan film didn't really do for me. On my fan service line graph, it certainly tilts into the red. It was predictable, which is an element that I tend to dislike, and in this, predictability felt like a feature rather than a bug. But, and that's a big but, this is only the first episode in what is said to be a series, so it's hard to judge the big picture of where things are moving, right? While this episode didn't really do much for me, didn't really give me anything narratively new, it seems to have done a pretty solid job setting up things to come, despite that setup feeling predictable and a little redundant. That being said, it's an enormous feat. One that, whether you like the fan film or not, should certainly be admired. I mean, fuck. The amount of work that went into just what, like 12 minutes? Must have been daunting. And not only that, it must have been nerve-wracking. I mean, imagine putting your heart and soul into a project. You're nervous, you're biting your fingernails, wondering if people are gonna like it. It's certainly a labor of love, and that shows. That labor of love definitely shows. While the film didn't hit me the way I was hoping it would, and it's not exactly what I'm looking for when it comes to what I love about Star Wars, I found that I did enjoy it more than I was expecting. Oh, and one last thing. Over the past 2 weeks or so, I've received a ton of messages and comments talking about how I wasn't watching the fan film because of some, like, trepidation or beef or some silly ass reason. Nope. I guess when there's a void, people just fill it in with their own thoughts. I don't know. As I said in every single live stream over the past few weeks, since this fan film came out, I was genuinely excited to watch it. And the only thing holding me back was time. I have a baby daughter, it was the holidays, I had family in town. Hell, I haven't really uploaded much in the past few weeks other than a couple comic book videos and some stuff I made a week before Christmas that I scheduled to upload around Christmas. So the idea that I wasn't watching it because of some OMG LOL shill paycheck or desire to please some mythical mouse overlord or any other nonsense being perpetuated by some silly fuck spinning narratives and stoking dumb divisions isn't true. If you watch the channel, you know that. Some people are fucking goofy, man. Hell, I met Star Wars Theory at a Battlefront 2 event about a year ago. Nice guy. We might not see eye to eye when it comes to the direction that the franchise is going, and that's fine. Who gives a shit? Anyway, congrats to Star Wars Theory on making his vision come to life. Congrats on fulfilling a dream that I'm sure he's had his entire life. And I hope that everyone can join me in saying, best of luck on the next episode. HelloGreedo, out.